Hey there, welcome to Bandit's Keep. I'm Daniel. On this channel, I do a lot of kind of GM/player advice, and I also build adventures, and we're going to get back to that. This is not continuing my mega dungeon, nor is it continuing the list of adventures from the basic book that I've been working on. I'll put links to some of those here. You can check all that out if you're interested. But what we're going to do here is a design of an adventure for October. It is October, and that means Halloween. And of course, the group loves to do horror type stuff. I'm going to try to do horror stuff all month, but I plan on running a game for my group. And what I wanted to do was create kind of a fairy tale horror vibe. Now, I think I'm ultimately going to run this in original Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm going to use the basic expert set to build it because that is probably the most popular OSR, if you will, game with old school essentials and Labyrinth Lord and many other games based on it, right? So this way, this is pretty open-ended for whatever you want to use. Now, when I'm creating an adventure, especially a horror adventure, I like to come up with the pitch first. So I've already written up the pitch. I've already actually posted it on the group where I game with my friends to see who was interested in playing. We'll take a look at that, and then I'll tell you my thought process, and we'll work our way through it. So let's take a look at my iPad. Okay, so we're looking at my iPad here. We can see I've called it the Huntsman Adventure. You'll see why in a second. You have served the court for several years, but have never been called to the Queen's audience chamber, and certainly not in the middle of the night. The Queen speaks. My loyal huntsman, this is a sad night indeed. Under the blood moon, your king has been attacked by a beast out of nightmare. Powerful jaws of a wolf and the agility of a man. No, a woman. This beast is none other than the king's daughter, Princess Joy. The court sage continues. The child has been cursed, and in turn the king as well. Unless the child is slain and the blood from her heart is made into an elixir. Only those in this room know of this, and we send you in complete secrecy to do this task. Do not tell your sergeants, or even go back to your rooms. I will take you to the armory, and you will ride now. For in the light of day, she will become the princess again, and I feel her beauty will stay your hand. So this is clearly the setup from Sleeping Beauty, right? Evil witch, queen sending out the huntsman to go kill the princess because she wants the king to herself, or however you want to look at it. And that would be fine and might be an option here. But what I've been thinking is the following. What if she really were a werewolf? What if the queen were evil but not a witch? What if she were a werewolf and the queen was evil and a witch, right? So there's lots of different options here, and we can create this. And as I was kind of making notes to myself, like in my notebook that I have, not in this digital one, but in my physical notebook, I thought, hold on a second. Maybe it's all of that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type up six because it's a 6-sided die, 6 options of what the plot could be. And then I'm going to design the adventure around pieces of information that I will need depending on which of these is true. And then the idea is going to be at the table right before you run this, you're going to roll the die. And at that point, that tells you who's doing what. And I think it'll be a fun way to run it because there'll be so many options, and it'll even surprise the DM. And sometimes even we like to be surprised. Okay, so I jotted down 6 options. Hopefully there's not too many typos. We'll go through these and I'll kind of give you my thought process. And then, like I say, we'll establish what we're going to need to make this adventure work. So number 1, the princess is an innocent girl. The queen is evil, but just human. So she's going to send a servant to follow and report on what the player characters do. Because of course, if the player characters go out there, just like in Sleeping Beauty, and they let her go and give a whatever they give in that, I can't remember. Let me know in the comments below what they give. Is it a chicken's heart or something? They give a different heart, basically. She wants to know. She's clever, right? She's a clever queen. She's scheming. So she's sending a servant to follow, which means that if they don't do what they're supposed to do, the confrontation here will be, because remember, we're playing D&D, so we kind of want there to be a fight at some point, or at least a possibility of it. The confrontation will be with men-at-arms who are going to arrest the huntsman for not following the queen's orders. Option 2, the princess is a werewolf, but she's innocent, and the queen is evil, but just human. So she has a servant follow and report, just like before with the men-at-arms, except the difference now is that if the PCs catch up to her before she's turned back to being human, she'll be a werewolf. And even when she turns back, they might witness that transformation. They might capture the wolf. There could be any number of things here. And the deal is that she turns into a werewolf. Maybe the king knows, and he's okay with it. He sends her off into the woods once a month where she kills, animals and stuff and does werewolfy things. But the queen finds out and figures this is a good way to get the princess killed and out of the way. Okay, so once again, the princess is a werewolf and innocent. But the queen is evil, but in this case, she is a witch. In this case, she's going to send, instead of a servant to follow the party, she'll send some kind of familiar. And again, if it ends up that the party doesn't do what they're supposed to do, they'll have a battle with a witch. And the witch will definitely want to make tough and fun to play with. I guess I like innocent princesses because number 4 is also the princess is innocent. And she's just a regular girl. The queen is an evil witch, and her familiar is sent to report. So again, just like before, except she's not a werewolf. So now, because remember, if the princess is a werewolf, she might have some toughness to her, so she could help the party defeat the evil witch. But so if she's a regular civilian, basically, just a princess, just a girl, she is going to be more vulnerable if the witch tries to take her out. The princess is an evil witch, so not a werewolf, but an evil witch who can shape change. The queen is righteous. So the queen believes that she's a lycanthrope or whatever, but she's actually a witch. So when the party goes out and they see her in the shape of a wolf with the king's blood on her, and they go to fight a werewolf, all their thoughts about how to kill a werewolf aren't going to matter because she's actually a witch and she can shape change into other things. Okay, number 6 is a little one of a tricky one, right? The princess is an evil witch who can shape change. She changes her shape into that of the queen. She's polymorphed the queen into her shape. So basically, the princess is sending the party out to kill the queen in the guise of her body. So it's a way to get the queen out of the way. And then, of course, when the party shows back up with this heart and the queen's missing, then the party's going to be in a weird spot, right? So we have like a few different options here where this could go many different ways. And obviously, if you're running this, you can just pick the one you think looks best. But let's look at this and see what we're going to need as far as rules and stats and stuff like that. The way I plan on running this, because of the nature of it, is it's going to be more sandboxy, right? We're going to keep it open-ended with just the knowledge that we have. Okay, so with this in mind, we need stats for normal human, right? Because that could be either the princess or the queen. We need one for the men-at-arms. So what are they armed with? Chainmail armor, spears, crossbows, whatever. We need stats for a werewolf because she might be a werewolf. We need stats for a witch queen, right? And then we also need stats for a princess witch. And the difference there is, you could just make one witch and give them all the same powers, but I feel like the princess witch, she definitely needs to have polymorph, where the witch queen wouldn't necessarily have it. You could do it either way. So we'll make both of these stat blocks. So we'll have the stat block as of the princess. Well, we're not going to make stat blocks as the princess is a normal person. We'll just have a stat for that, right? Okay, what else do we need here? Well, they got to track her. They got to track her into the woods. We also need some kind of time frame to make it more interesting. So I'm thinking that this happens in the middle of the night. We're going to do the movement turns as 20 minutes. So every 2 exploration turns, which means that you're going to have 3 turns in an hour. Let's say that there's like half a dozen turns. All right, so let's say when the party reaches the woods, there's 2 hours till sunrise. So, right, so she's telling them at like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, but they got to travel to the wood. So that'll be an easy thing. You'll definitely be able to track the wolf to the woods, right? Or the princess or whatever. And then we're going to check every 2 turns once they get in there to see if they are lost or if they have an encounter, which basically means there's 6 turns or 6 checks before sunrise. And at sunrise, she becomes human again, based on our lore here. So what we're looking at is if she is the werewolf and they get her after sunrise, then she'll be easier to capture in a lot of ways, right? But also she'll be, can they prove that she was the werewolf? And do they want to slaughter somebody who might be innocent? So that's going to be that whole moral thing, right? Okay, so we need a chase mechanic and a tracking mechanic. And we kind of already have these in a sense, okay? In Basic Expert, we have basically if you're traveling around on the outside, there's a chance, depending on where you are, to be lost. So I think for tracking, as long as they don't get lost, they will continue to follow the trail of the wolf. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say there's also going to be a chance for random encounters. So the random encounter could be anything in the woods, and one of them will be the princess. So effectively every 2 turns, so 6 times, We're going to roll the die. If it comes up for the woods, it would be a 1 or a 2. They get lost. So if it comes up as a 1 or a 2, they lost the trail, which means they have to backtrack. So that's again going to delay them. If they roll a 5 or 6, it is going to be an encounter. And some of those encounters, I'll make a list of encounters, will be the rolls of the encounter anyways, will be the werewolf. So that way, or the princess or whatever. So this way they've got a chance of encountering her. Now, I probably would just roll 1 die, right? If you roll 1 die, 1 or 2, you're lost, you lose the turn. 3 or 4, you kept your pace with her. 5 or 6. Okay, so see, as I'm saying it out loud, if they get lost, there needs to be a penalty, which means that I'm going to say they lose a turn getting back. And they only have 6 turns, right? So let's play through this. First turn, they enter the woods. I roll the die. It's a 2. That means they're lost. That means turn 2, they're backtracking. Now that I roll again, it's turn 3. They're already halfway through the night. They haven't found her yet. Let's say instead I rolled a 5 or 6. I will check my wandering monster table. And when I do that, again, some of them will be the princess. And what I think I'll do is I'm going to have this be a wandering monster table where basically we'll get to that in a second. Let's just handle this first. All right. So we have chase mechanic. All right, so I'm going to erase where I say chase mechanic because it's really just a tracking mechanic. So our tracking mechanic is they roll 1d6 every 2 turns. On a 1 or a 2, the party has lost the trail and must backtrack. They lose 2 turns. On a 3 to 4, the chase continues. So basically just roll again. On a 5 or 6 is an encounter. So let's make an encounter table. What I'm going to do on this encounter table is I'm going to make it a D12 encounter table. And the reason why I'm going to do that is I'm going to add 1 for every turn that has elapsed. Okay, so again, it's not necessarily going to be 12 things, but I'm going to use a D12 because that way I can have it continue to build up. And then eventually on the 12th turn, you'll be adding 12. So you'll definitely encounter the princess who's going to be the highest number. You could encounter her right away, of course. Okay, again, I'm going to use D12 for my wandering monster list. You could do this any way you want, but what I'm thinking is there's essentially 12 exploration turns before daylight. Every time they roll on this wandering monster chart, they will add the number of turns that they've been exploring. So if they get a wandering monster the first time, they're going to actually add to the roll 2 because you get it the second, right? So they're going to have a 3 would be the lowest one you could actually get. So I'm not going to put anything in 1 or 2. So basically it's going to be a D12 plus the number of turns they've been exploring, which means that by the end they will have to encounter the princess who's going to be number 12. So now what can we have in this woods? Let's take a look at the monsters. Okay, so our expert book has wilderness encounter tables. And what I like to do when I'm making special encounter tables is I'll look at what they have. So under woods, they have men, flyer, humanoid, insect, unusual, animal, dragon. We're not going to have a dragon in this one, I think. So the dragon will be the princess, right? She's going to be the highest level one, or the witch. So we're looking at like out of the 8, like a quarter of these should be animals. And remember, I only have 10 here. So I'm going to say 3 of them are going to be animals. And then I'll do insect, and maybe we'll do men, and they might actually run into other men at arms and stuff, and they might be like, have to, role play to be like, oh no, we're just out here in the woods, kind of thing. So let's take a quick look at suitable men. So suitable men for woods, we have brigand, bandit, adventurers, merchant, brigand, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I'm not gonna worry about that. I'm just gonna make it, and I think the deeper they go into the woods, the less likely they are to run into men. So I'm gonna say man at arms is going to be 3, which would be the lowest one. And then we're going to make the more difficult stuff higher up. So there's unusual. What's unusual? The unusual ones, actually looking at it, are a little bit too monstery, and I kind of want to keep this a little bit more fairy tale. So I think maybe we'll just stick with animals and insects. So I can see insects. We've got killer bees, giant scorpion again, which is kind of, some of that might be a little bit much, but I think a giant spider might be good. So spider, giant. Let's say spider black widow might be good. We'll say that. Okay, and then we're going to look under the animals, because I think animals and men are going to be the most likely. Actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go men at arms. Let's just make a list of what we might want to use. I'll say man at arms. There could be hunters in the woods. And let's say that there are poachers as well. So we can add a little bit of something special there. So the hunters are other huntsmen that they might know, men at arms as well. Poachers are going to be illegal people out there. Like, what are you doing, right? Let's check the animals. For the woods, we've got antelope, boar, hawk. They're not going to be a hawk at night, but I see snake, pit viper, unicorn. So wolves, of course. So let's go wolf. Let's go wolf. Let's go dire wolf. Let's go. We got snake pit viper. And let's do boar. I like a good wild boar. Okay, and then of course we have the princess herself. So when I'm looking at this, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I think I want to, I have several types of men. So let's actually fill this out a bit now. We've got, so when I'm looking at this, I have like 7 ideas here, or 8 if you count the princess. And I've got 10 slots. So I think I'm going to double up on wolves because I feel like wolves will be a theme, right? So I'm going to go close to the castle or close to the area. You're going to run into men-at-arms. Then we'll say hunters. And then we'll say poachers. That makes sense, right? Then we're going to, let's sprinkle in a wolf. Then let's add snake. I'm going to put dire wolf closer to the princess because that's actually also a tough combat. A boar is also a pretty tough combat, but I don't want to put 2 wolves in a row, so I'm going to go wolf. Do we get snake in there yet? Yeah, we do. Okay, so wolf, boar, wolf. All right, so again, because you're adding the number of turns they've been out there and you're not rolling until after 2, they're not going to get a roll that's less than 3. So these I don't need to worry about. Basically, what we're going to do here is say man-at-arms, which is from the castle, obviously, hunters, poachers, a wolf, snakes, a wolf, or wolves, boar, wolves, dire wolf, and then the princess herself. Okay, so they very well might roll to encounter the princess immediately, right? Like the first time they step into the woods, which could be fine, whatever. But because I want this to go a couple of hours and I'm thinking of it this way and I want it to be a little bit more of a challenge, what I think we're going to do is we're going to say that if they encounter the princess before a certain time of night, they just notice her tracks. If they encounter her at a different time of night, they will see her at a distance, at the maximum distance outside, and she'll run. And then if it's within the third, we'll say the third chunk of the night, they'll encounter her. So let's take a look here. Okay, so if they roll a 12, the first, whatever, or 10, and the first round they're out, or the first turn, they're not just going to, be up on her and it'll be the end of it. You could do that if you want, but I think this will work nicely. Depending on what turn it is, remember, there's going to be about 12 turns during this adventure. 1 through 4, they don't encounter her. They just find fresh tracks, but they get +1 on their next roll. So chances are they might encounter her right away again. Because you don't want to take everything away from the party just because you don't want it to end too soon. 5 to 8, they see the princess at basically this is the distance for outdoor. So at 4d6 times 10 yards away, and she will run. So chances are they're going to chase her. But again, so I think I'll do here again, +1 to track. Okay, so again, and then assuming they don't actually catch her there, if they encounter her at turn 9 through 12, they'll encounter her at close range within 60 yards, so they can actually, have some kind of a role play or a combat or whatever it might be, because it'll be near the end of the night, and that'll be the exciting part. So that's basically how the princess is going to work and the chase is going to work. Okay, so before we get into stat blocks and all that other kind of stuff, let's take a quick look at how this is going to work. You'll introduce the adventure to the party the way that I read that stuff to you. The queen, gives them this task. They'll follow the sage down to the armory. They will be fitted with whatever weapons and stuff you deem fair. I would say anything in the normal book would be fine. Just what do you guys want? They'll given horses, whatever. They're going to ride to the woods, at which point they're going to need to go on foot. At that point, whether they walk to the woods or they ride to the woods, this is all narrative stuff. Basically, they're going to get to the wood and they're going to have 2 hours until daylight. Every other turn, you're going to roll a d6. If it comes up 1 or 2, they lose time. If it comes up 3 or 4, they just keep going. If it comes up 5 or 6, there's an encounter. When you roll on the encounter chart, you're going to roll a d12 plus the number of turns that they're in. So at the end of the second turn, so the first time you roll, you'll add 2 to that. When they get a result of 12 or better, they're going to encounter the princess. But depending on what turn it is during the chase, she'll have different reactions, from just kind of finding her tracks to finding her at a distance or to her running away, that kind of stuff. So now we have the basis, right? effectively they've got to catch her. So it's going to be this series of encounters going through the woods until they catch her, which they eventually will. Now you might be saying, what happens if they just keep rolling 3s and 4s and they don't encounter anything, they don't get lost? Well, we'll need something for that, right? I think that at the end of 12 turns, they will penetrate the end of the woods and they will encounter the princess there. So we need normal human stat blocks, which is in the book. We don't need to do anything special there. We need men-at-arms, which should be veterans. They're also in the book. We need the werewolf, which again is going to be in the book. We need poachers, right? So I think the poachers will probably be as brigands. They've got them in there. And we're going to go with now we need specific stuff. We need some kind of witch queen / witch princess. Okay, so just to make this simple, and since I'm making a video, I don't want to sit here and roll a bunch of dice, I'm going to use the Old School Essentials generators, which are free to use online. And we jump over here. We've got a bunch of them here. We've used these before. I'm going to use the NPC generator by class and level. I know that Polymorph is a 4th level spell, and I know that they need to be able to cast it, so you need to be 7th level to do that. So I'm going to go by class and level, and they're going to be a magic user, of course, and I'm going to do a 7th level magic user. Now, this is going to give them all their spells and stuff. I'm just going to replace whatever 7th level spell they have with Polymorph. I'm not going to roll up all separate spells. I'm just going to do it like this. It's easy as that. There's a chance they might have magic items because that'll be good, and let's roll it. Boom. All right, we have Charm Person, Light, Darkness, Ventriloquism, Detect Evil, Web, Infravision, Dispel Magic, Confusion. So Confusion is the 7th level spell, so I'll replace that with that. She also has a Potion of Invulnerability and a Ring of Wishes. Well, that could be really interesting. Now, you might say, Daniel, that's way too powerful. I'm not going to give that to my group. That's fine. I actually don't have a problem with it because I love the way this kind of stuff works. I also realize that, at least for me, if I had a Ring of Wishes, as a character or whatever, I'm not going to use that Ring of Wishes just willy-nilly, because you can't treat NPCs or even monsters like this is it, right? Like, well, I'm never going to use them again, because obviously we know that's the case, but you want to be smart about it. She's got this Ring of Wishes with 2 to 4 wishes. She's not going to use a wish unless she absolutely has to, which actually this could create a nice recurring character. So I've got all this stuff. The potion might be completely useless for her, but she might use it to bribe somebody. This is going to be the princess. Now, again, you could use the same stat for the other witch, but let's see. So, what I'm going to do, just keep things simple. I'll keep the same stats because who really cares, right? I mean, we just need a 7th level magic user, and we're only going to use one or the other. So what I'll do is I'll say princess / queen if witch. Okay. And then I'm going to make a note down at the bottom. I'm going to say if princess is witch, replace confusion with polymorph. Okay, right? You got to replace confusion. So if the princess is the witch, I'll replace confusion with polymorph. In both cases, a owl familiar. There are no find familiar spells or anything like that in the basic expert set. So I'm not even going to bother. I'm just going to say, you know what a witch is. You know how a familiar works. It's easy enough, right? So there you go. I think the only other thing we might do is if you really wanted to, we could add some dwarfs out in the woods. If you wanted to add those in instead of like the boars or something, and you want to add more fairy tale to it. But I think in general, we've got a pretty good setup here. Once again, I'll run through it. I think this is all we really need. Let me just check again. We don't need a map. We don't need lots and lots of names and stuff. You can do that if you want to flavor it up. But in the basic construction of the adventure, we need a hook. Now with this, I'm making it way more complicated than I need to because I have this random stuff. But let's take a look. Let's say I roll a die and I get a 3. So the 3 is the princess is innocent, but also a werewolf. The queen is evil and a witch. Her familiar follows and reports. So we need the stat for a werewolf. We need the stat for the queen. And I think the way I would run a werewolf in this, again, being more fairy tale, is that she cannot turn back from being a werewolf until the morning, right? And I know that's not the way the rules are, but again, this is for this adventure. And if, in fact, you can even say that, put this in here. Let's make some notes for ourselves. If the princess is a werewolf, she could not change back until dawn, and then will do so automatically. So now in our case, we've got this princess werewolf running around. So hopefully the party captures her and doesn't just try to kill her, right? Because she's innocent. And then we've got the queen, and we have all these spells: charm person, light, ventriloquism, detect evil, web, infravision, dispel magic, confusion that she can use, because again, she doesn't have polymorph. She also has this potion of invulnerability and a ring of wishes. So you can spin this into anything you like. If we do the first one and everybody's just regular people, then we just use the men at arm and stuff, and everything else still works out exactly the same. I guess I should point out, because I don't think I said this at the beginning, that this is going to be for a second level party. I'm imagining between 4 and 6 player characters. If you have less than 5, we'll say, or 4 or less, I would probably add some henchmen, because this is not going to be easy. You can up and down. And again, I don't recommend that you change the number of men at arm and stuff like that on the fly when the combat's happening, but you can base it loosely on what's going on. So if you have a bigger party, you can send out a larger group of men at arms. If you have a smaller party, you'll send out a smaller group. It's that simple, but I would definitely lock it in before you do it. That way you don't feel the need to add or subtract, because I find that to be, I don't know, it's too tempting, I think, as a game master, especially a new one, to change things to make things seem more exciting or to be less deadly. But part of an old school game, part of the vibe here is that we're letting this be random, especially in this case. So I would love to know what you think of this adventure. I'm going to run it for my group, and you'll see it. I'll put a link in the description below once I have run it, so you guys can see the actual play if you'd like. You can also find a link to my Discord in the notes below, the show notes. There you can join the Discord, jump in, chat, have fun. We have great discussions going on over there. You can also support me on Patreon. The link to that is also in the show notes. So much stuff down there. Also, I did put a link to all the games I'm mentioning, Basic Expert, etc., so that if you're new to this and you're not sure what those are, you can check them out below. If you have any other questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll talk to you soon. I just want to add this in here. I'm just finished, and I realized I did not mention, so this will be inserted somewhere randomly in the video. I'm not putting a lot of treasure in this, and the reason for that is because this is a one-shot with characters they're not going to use again. It's a very set up thing where it's literally just, we're going to play one night, we're going to use it. If you want to use this in a campaign, probably the simplest way to have the treasure would be to have some kind of a reward. Either if they do the task, they get some kind of gold, which you would give them experience points for, or if they save the princess, let's say if she is innocent and the queen's evil, then the princess will give them some kind of a reward. So that's how I would handle the XP for this. It's a second level adventure, so you're probably going to want them to get, somewhere in the vicinity of a couple thousand gold pieces worth of treasure out of this in the end, because if you've got an average size party, that's about what it'll take to keep them on track. So it could be, and again, I wouldn't necessarily give them just 2,000 gold pieces, because that seems a little off the wall, but you could give them a couple of gifts that have value, a sheath for their sword, a cloak that's worth 300 gold pieces. Give the players something that their characters might keep, and then you don't have to worry about them having tons of gold. I've talked about that before in videos as well.